All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to Legally Bound, Business and Real Estate Explained. I'm here, your host, with the one and only Terry Fox, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, all. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit about the real estate market, how things have changed in the past years, maybe some changes in policy that should be enacted by Congress to make things better. And then we're going to end with some tips and tricks towards how to get out of a contract you really didn't want to be in. And to start off, we're going to give it to Fez, and he can give us all the factual details.
All right. So listen up, all you young people, Gen Z folks, or those of you who want to buy a home. I have some great stats that I want to share with you. Let's put up this chart, can we? This is the chart on buying versus renting in America. I mean, here are just some of the stats, okay? It's crazy. In 1995, the median price of a home was $130,000. You needed a down payment of $26,000, okay, to buy a home, and the interest rate at that point was 7.86%. So that means your principal and interest, your P&I, was $753 in 1995. In 2019, the median price of a home jumped to $260,000. You now needed a down payment of $52,000 at a 4% interest rate. That meant you had a P&I of $993. You get that, Karen? Okay, now compare this to 2023, post-COVID. The median price of a home, ladies and gentlemen, you ready for this? $419,000.
Almost a double.
Yeah, the down payment goes to $84,000. The interest rate is 7.24%. Your P&I is $2,283.
So that's your monthly mortgage payment, not including the taxes, which will be added to that, and your association dues. So
it has never been more expensive to own a home in America. Let's examine those numbers with the relationship with average incomes, okay? In 1995, the average income was $29,000, which meant that you were paying 31% of your income towards the mortgage. In 2019, the average income was $56,000. You had to put up 21% of your income to own a home. In 2023,
there was no change.
No change in it, 56,000, yes. But you pay 49% of your income to own a home.
It's 50%, So that's bad.
So remember, I don't think that it's the interest rate that's the problem here, because the interest rates were just as high, if not higher, earlier, right? In the 80s, yeah,
95,
and even before in the 70s, it was much higher. What has happened is that, and this is my opinion, post-COVID money printing, okay, led to massive asset inflation. When they printed trillions and trillions of dollars in the 2 years after COVID, that's what led to skyrocketing home prices in America.
Because there was more money in the system.
Yes.
People were going to spend it. People were going to borrow it.
Yes. And let's put up this chart, Karen. This is the chart of U.S. mortgage applications sink to lowest since 1995. I mean, just look at this chart. It's ridiculous. It's never been as low. In fact, it wasn't even this low in the 2008 housing crash. Okay? Now, let's look at the other side of the picture, which is the debt. Okay? Because I think that this is an interesting statistic as well to look at. The total household debt in America right now is $17.1 trillion. Mortgage debt, $12 trillion. Auto loans, $1.6 trillion. Credit card debt surpassed $1 trillion. Okay? The current interest rates, credit card debt is at 25% or higher. New car loans are going for as high as 14% or higher. Used cars, 9% or higher. 30-year mortgages at 7.5%. And the worst part of it is that student loan payments are set to resume soon. And total student loan debt just hit $1.6 trillion, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Delinquencies are up, and it seems like the country is stretched thin, okay? And I kind of feel like, that Klaus Schwab WEF report in which they said the WEF agenda
Okay,
2023.
Explain what's WEF?
The World Economic Forum, folks.
Okay.
The World Economic Forum. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
You don't know what the World Economic Forum is? Okay. Klaus Schwab, the bad guy,
No.
the CEO. Okay.
Well, tell us.
So okay. There's this WEF report, like Agenda for 2030, okay, which talks about one of the aims is that they say it in their own words, okay? I'm not making it up. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Can you say that in a German accent? He's German too.
No.
You are German.
Yeah, I know, but I don't do it. You will own nothing and you will be happy.
He also says that the world as a whole will eat less meat progressively, and he also says you will eat the bugs.
You will eat the bugs.
There you go. I love it.
Okay.
So,
well, what are we going to do? Do I just slip my wrist now, or shoot my family? What do we do?
well, why don't you talk about? So imagine if you are trying to look for a home right now. Okay. Well, if something fits your budget, sure, go for it. But there is a school of thought. And even if you've seen that documentary on Netflix by this gentleman called Ramit Sethi, How to Get Rich. Okay. He's written this book in which he's talking about don't buy a home. He says renting is better than buying a home. And his reasoning is some agree with it, some don't. He's basically saying, look, a mortgage is the minimum that you have to pay, okay? Because there's a lot of other added expenses that creep up on you as a homeowner.
I hear you. No.
Whereas the rent is the max that you're ever paying.
Well, what about the argument that there's no equity in renting?
Yeah. Okay. So the whole argument that, hey, if I'm renting, I'm not building any equity. All right. So this is what he says. If you look at your amortization chart, okay, when you're buying a home, you put your 20% down and they give you an amortization chart. Look at that. All right, folks. And this is a key point for those of you who aren't aware of this. That chart will show you that for the first good chunk of the first 15 years, in fact, the majority of your mortgage payments are going towards interest. Very little of it is going towards the principal. So let's say if you decide to sell your home in 5 years, you haven't built up any equity whatsoever. So let's say if your mortgage payment is $5,000, well, in the beginning, probably $4,200 or $4,400 is going towards interest. And barely a portion of it is going to go towards the principal.
And if you instead were renting, instead of paying a $5,000 mortgage, if you're smart, you will rent the smallest, cheapest place that you can have. And let's say you're spending $1,000 a month on rent. Okay, but you're saving $4,000 a month in that. Most of that is going to the bank in interest payments. So
you are working for the banks, right, folks.
But let me tell you something. My parents, when they
are working for the banks.
Okay.
It's true.
Okay. Can I tell my story?
Sorry, yes.
It's very interesting.
Okay, yes.
My parents bought their first home in 1965. It was a single level Rambler in Riverside, California. It had a beautiful pool. It cost them $18,000. Now,
to buy the whole thing.
In 1965. So now, and back then, the strategy was you buy a little home, you pay that off and sell it, you buy a little bigger home, you pay that off and sell it. And the thought was that since real estate is so wonderful, it always goes up in value. That was the joke. Okay, so, but that was true for a long period of time. When my parents got to be, in their 50s, they bought a beautiful home. They paid, they had, because of the equity they had built up over the many years of buying and selling homes, they were in the service. So they were moving around and doing this a lot. They were able to buy a very nice home, paid it all off. And, but things have changed, as we've just seen. So now there's the school of thought that says, all right, a real estate, a home is not the best place to invest your money. So instead, if you can pay half or a third of what a normal mortgage would be, and take that other chunk of money and put it into bonds or stock or crypto or whatever you think is going to work, that you may actually make more money over time than you would expecting to be able to sell your property for a boatload more money. Also, the other thing is that when you, if you're renting, you can always leave.
Yeah.
You can leave, and maybe you owe the last couple months of rent, but nobody's going to foreclose on your lease. That doesn't, not a thing. So there is, it may actually, if you are working your numbers correctly, you may actually be able to save more money by renting. Now, do you have the problem that, you are renting? But here's the thing. When it comes to owning a home, you have to replace expensive stuff. We had a lightning storm a while back, and one of my two HVAC units went out. It was fried. The motherboard was fried. My laptop fried. The power supply to the router for the internet fried. My dryer fried. Now, I was able to have the dryer repaired for $300. I was lucky. My home insurance covered the HVAC unit. That was $6,800. They gave me $5,800. Wonderful. But the point here is that you constantly have things that you will have to replace. I was very lucky in some sense that it was a lightning strike, because that unit was from 1984. It was going to die anyway. So thank God I had insurance. It was a lightning. That was a covered event, and I got my money. But the point here being is, owning property is expensive. You have to fix roofs. You have to fix leaks. You have to fix...
And if you're the tenant, it's not your responsibility. It's the landlord's responsibility, unless the lease states otherwise. But usually all these big expenses are the landlord's responsibility.
So anyway, there is that.
Then the caveat to that, though, is you have to deal with someone else's timeline for stuff. So say you notify the landlord that, hey, the HVAC doesn't work, and then, they don't get on it to fix it. Obviously, when it's you're motivated living there to get something repaired, they're not motivated because they don't live there. They don't have to deal with it. So how do you... so
that's why we have the legal system.
That's why we have lawyers.
That's why we have the tenant's assertion. In a situation like this, a residential tenant can file a tenant's assertion claiming that the landlord is not giving him a habitable premises.
Yeah, so there are legal remedies to do that. And if you do have a property, if you rent somewhere where there's a property management company, they are a little better than Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who may live in Florida, and you have to catch them when they're back from bingo.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So it's just the point being that sometimes it might not be a bad idea to rent for a while. Especially if you're going to be in someplace for a short period of time and you don't want the hassle of having to then try and resell it and try and resell it in whatever market you happen to be in at that time, considering it's going like this.
I have a third idea.
Oh, what's that?
Try an Airbnb hack.
What?
Okay, here's what you do, folks. You ready? You ready?
Okay.
You buy a home.
Yeah.
Okay. If it has a basement or extra rooms that you can put up on Airbnb, you can try getting income from that to offset against
True.
the mortgage. Or you can rent out a portion of that property
True.
and get that rental income and use it towards the mortgage.
Okay.
It may not completely alleviate or sort of prevent you from paying the mortgage, but at least it's going to help.
That solution, it'd be great if you're not in an association.
Oh yeah,
covered
of course.
area.
You got to check for that.
I mean, if you have a house that's not in an association and what you want to do doesn't violate any county ordinances, because there are counties that have restrictions on short-term rentals.
Yes.
But certainly, even in associations, okay, they may or they may not have restrictions on.
I hate
short
associations,
terms.
by the way.
So okay, well,
They're the worst, man.
I think they're wonderful. So because they maintain value of the property. Anyway, the point being is
More
that
of a nuisance.
but
Seriously.
making turning your house into an income generating asset. Sure.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
I think that's a creative idea
Wouldn't you need
of trying to beat the bankers.
Wouldn't you need special insurance for that though? Would your homeowner's insurance cover damage if you were Airbnb-ing short-term rentals?
You probably do need additional, insurance, but
Yes.
it's not going to be super expensive. It's going to be $100 maybe a
Would that
year.
just be added
I don't
into your
know.
homeowner's insurance, or would it be separate?
It'd be a rider to the policy, I believe.
Yeah.
So, but let's say you do want to buy a home and you do sign a contract.
Yeah. So you've signed a contract and you're stuck with it. So tell us about certain tricks that we can use to.
In Virginia, if you're in Northern Virginia, you're going to be buying with an association, where it's part of an association.
Yeah.
And under Virginia law, regardless of whether it's a single family home, either a single, separate, or with a townhouse, or if it's a condominium, there are two separate acts that cover sales of each type of residence. And they each require that after the contract is signed and before closing, you must be provided, and the seller pays for this, something called a resale certificate package. And inside the resale certificate package, you're going to find a statement from the association about the current debts of that particular unit to the association. There will be the last year's budget. There should be at least, I think, 6 months of meeting minutes from the board. You should see a copy of the managing documents, the documents that actually created the neighborhood. So it could be called a declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or a deed of re-subdivision when the original owner subdivided Happy Acres into 1,000 plots, or in a condominium, it's a declaration of condominium. And for both a declaration or deed, regardless of the entity, there will be that declaration and there'll be the bylaws. Those two instruments must be recorded in the land records, and you must be provided a copy of them, along with any rules and regulations that have been passed by the association.
These are called the HOA docs.
Yeah. Where the resale certificate package. Yeah. And when you receive them, you have 3 days to kill the deal and get your earnest money back. But 3 days, and that's it. If you get your resale certificate and you're looking at it on day 1, and you're looking at it on day 2, and you're looking at it on day 3, and then somewhere in day 3 you think, the budget is missing. I think I'm going to call the HOA and get a copy of that because I just found this problem on day 3. And certainly, I'm not going to lose my rights to cancel because I've told them I need something else. Certainly, that must be true. It's not. If you find, the courts have said that if you don't kill the deal in the 3 days, good luck. You're going to buy a new home. There's no out. They're very strict about that. But you have that 3-day period. And in fact, many times, you'll get your home inspection first and you'll find out maybe you only did a home inspection for information purposes and you really can't do anything about the fact that the home inspector found cracks in the foundation and water coming through the roof and clogs.
You know what's funny?
What?
A very, very old paralegal of ours who had worked here, she texted me a while ago. She's like, I'm buying a home. Do you have any advice? Because I'm not liking it. I was like, did you get your HOA docs? She's like, well, what's that? I'm like, is there an association? She's like, yes. I'm like, check and see if you got your HOA docs. If you didn't, then you can rescind within 3 days.
Yeah.
And I think that's what she ended up doing.
Yeah, and in fact, actually,
She was like, yes!
If you have decided
still
that you
love
want
you.
to, you can kill the deal even before you've actually received the documents.
Yeah.
Send a notice, I'm killing the deal under Virginia Code, whatever it is.
Some realtors mess up and they don't send it until towards the end of the transaction. No.
Yeah, now here's the other thing too. If you get to the end of, it's the day before closing and you still haven't gotten it, you don't have to close because it's a seller's obligation to provide it.
Because that means the dirty HOA is hiding some secrets that they don't want you to know about.
Well, it could be somebody's trying to hide something, but it's just a really effective tool to keep in your back pocket in case you want to get out.
Yeah.
Now, there were 2 other things that I always like to say is that the standard contracts are without any type of modification are death to buyers if they can't get to closing. And after being in the business for like 30 years, it's amazing how many times buyers think everything's cool with their lender, and 3 days before closing, lender says, no. Yeah.
Because the underwriting department says XYZ.
Yeah. What's unfortunate is that the person who pushes the button to send the money, he does not see that application until about a week before closing. You've been talking to Johnny at the front office and Sally who double checks the spelling.
How many cases do we get in situations exactly like this?
It's pretty frequent. It's pretty often. So
my God.
The problem here is that everybody, one of the things that the contract requires is a written conditional commitment to loan. Oh, doesn't that sound good? It has the words commitment to loan. Yes, that's wonderful. It gives you nice goosebumps and the warm fuzzies.
Folks. It's conditional.
Yes, there's that word conditional. And that's there because, what was the guy's name with the German guy's name?
Klaus Schwab. Yeah.
Okay.
You will eat the bugs.
Herr Klaus, who's the underwriter who pushes the button, gets the application and says, Nein. Rejected. Because he says, no, you don't make enough money. There's not enough money or whatever. And he just says, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to do it. Now, here's the big problem. Even if you have a financing contingency, that financing contingency is going to require you to deliver the denial letter from the lender to the other agent and along with the notice to release. It probably won't surprise you that the length of time that it takes from Klaus to deciding not sending the money to you getting that denial letter is about a week. So if you're only 2 days out from your closing, you're not going to have that denial letter on the day of closing, which means it would be too late, which means you're going to be in default. So now, how do we soften that blow?
But wait, explain to them like what happens when you're in default. Okay, because
Oh, yeah.
people think, oh, I just lost my earnest money deposit. And I'm like, no, not really. That's not the true extent of your liability. It
Yeah.
could be more.
Yeah.
Here's how.
Yeah. If let's say, so you didn't make closing, you put down $30,000 earnest money because it's a very nice house, and now you don't close. You're in default. Unfortunately, they don't immediately make a decision between the liquidated damages, 30,000, and suing you for something called specific performance, or suing you for damages. I'm sorry, suing you for damages. Because let's say that $1 million home on Monday is going for $1 million, but something really bad happens to the market, and now on the next day it's worth $800,000. So they have to put it up and sell it for $800,000 instead of $1 million. You're going to be sued for the difference between what they sell it for.
$200,000.
So $200,000, and that's just too
And
bad.
attorney's fees.
And attorney's fees, right? So and that has happened in the past. And I bought a townhouse in 2015? No, 2005. That's right. That was my first house. Yeah. I bought it for $485,000 in 1 year. Because of the crash, it was worth $285,000. Things can happen to values of homes very quickly and without you having any clue it's coming. So in any case, so you can get sued for an awful lot of money if you default, unless you take one very simple precaution, and that is to add something in the contract at the end that says, notwithstanding anything to the contrary.
Well, you don't have to repeat the language, just the
upon
concept.
A buyer default, seller's sole remedy shall be $3,000, $5,000 earnest money, $50. You limit that amount of money, and most of the time, sellers don't care as long as they know they will get something if you don't show up at closing. So even if it's for the earnest money or half the earnest money, at least you will know exactly how much money you're going to have to pay if you decide not to go to closing for some reason, which may be that you did a home inspection and you did all kinds of inspections, but they were for information purposes only. That's okay. If you have limited your liability on default, okay, at least you know. You sign the contract, you do the inspections, you see, oh, this is going to take $300,000 to fix all these problems, and it's only for information purposes only. Well, if you've limited your liability on default, then you know that, okay, I can get out of this $200,000 problem for $3,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Then that's you're going to be much better off.
Or what you can also do is that and this is kind of sneaky that some people do.
Okay, it's very quiet.
When they have the initial open house, you can go there with your contractor and just sort of scope the place out, check it out. I mean, of course you can't go around digging stuff.
But you can go around with a little light bulb and a plug and put it in all the electrical outlets to make sure they go on. You can flush the toilets, turn on the hot
Sometimes,
water.
Contractors see stuff that the ordinary person doesn't,
Yeah.
Like he could see, hey, wait a second, I see that floor is sloping there. What's up with that? Because remember, folks, if the house is sinking, according to Virginia law, which is caveat emptor, the seller doesn't have to tell you anything. It's the buyer who has to investigate the condition of the property.
Yeah. And that's why, for older homes or sometimes even newer homes by really small contractors.
Yeah.
Okay. The soil may not be sufficient to hold up the house.
Yeah.
The really large builders, and I'm not going to name names, but the national or the ones that operate all along the eastern seaboard, they have soil scientists, and when they buy land, they have soil scientists who go in and figure out exactly what type of soil's there. If they want to build on this lot, what type of gravel do they have to dig up and dump in order to make sure the house doesn't fall over in 3 years. Smaller contractors do not do that. They buy the land, they dig the hole.
They seriously don't give a.
Yeah, I mean,
They just want to make a quick buck.
they're not going to spend that money on, for the larger companies, the larger contractors who build homes have learned their lesson that, it's much less expensive to just make sure you can build on solid ground than not. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was my list of tips and tricks.
All right, well, folks, if you like this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you all in the next video.
Bye.
Ciao.
So long.